Hi guys, and I know what you're thinking. Before we go too far, not only has he branched out to Pokémon, but now this moron's writing for Naruto. And truth be told, I've been writing multiple Naruto what ifs on and off for the last few months. However, I've been put off from doing any thanks to how poorly my last Naruto what if kind of did. And it kind of led me to push away a little bit. But thanks to the current success of What If Ash was trained by Oak, it has brought me back into trying them out a little bit, meaning as though my seemingly fan base has spread a little bit. And also, I think the issue with the last one is it wasn't too interesting, and not about a popular character, so I'm going to try something which I imagine will be a bit more popular, and at least I enjoyed thinking about it. And probably is about one of the most popular characters I can think of in Sasuke. Now, just a forewarning once again, Naruto is not my biggest forte. It is probably something I'm very knowledgeable on, and I have been rereading things to make sure I've got everything right. But for the most part, I will have some blank areas, which I might just brush over. But with that being said, let's start our story. We start our story during the final moments of Naruto's and Sasuke's battle in the Valley of the End, both kids readying their strongest attack. For Sasuke, he readies his Chidori, while Naruto starts prepping up his Rasengan. However, he knows this is his last shot, so Naruto confronts the Ninetales internally, demanding more chakra, but this just gets a laugh out of Kurama, who explains that he won't be giving the brat any more chakra than he already does. However, eternally, Kurama doesn't want to lose to an Uchiha. They all really annoy him. So, instead of giving more chakra, he gives the kid a small bit of advice. He explains to Naruto, in a very vague way, how to infuse his own chakra nature with the Rasengan. He explains it very briefly, and not very straightforward. Naruto is confused by it, but when asking for a bit more information, Kurama doesn't share anything more. He's already helped the kid out more than he believes he had to. But for Naruto, this is still throwing something into the dark. He has a good idea of what he needs to do, but the kid doesn't even know his own chakra nature and knows nothing of them. So for now, Naruto digs deep and thinks about how he can pull this off, reliving the vague steps given to him that Kurama was explaining. As he begins to mould his Rasengan, a small change happens. However, to the naked eye, it's hardly noticeable. But as Naruto can feel the power increase, he jumps towards Sasuke, with the Uchiha doing the same. With this new prototype attack, it actually gives Naruto the edge in this clash, and just as the two make contact, Sasuke's eyes pick up what changed with the Rasengan. It's been infused with wind chakra. It's too late for Sasuke to pull out as the two attacks clash. There is a brief moment of back and forth before Naruto pulls out triumphant, with this prototype attack letting out a massive blast, smashing both Naruto and Sasuke into the valley walls, knocking Sasuke out as Naruto hardly clings to consciousness. Pulling himself to his feet, he goes to celebrate, but can't lift his arm. It's busted up heavily. He doesn't know what happened, but he thanks Kurama internally. He doesn't know what happened, or what that attack was, but it gave him just enough power to pull the win out. So, Naruto weakly walks over to his friend and sees he's unconscious. Throwing him over his good shoulder, he starts slowly walking back to the village, and soon he runs into Kakashi, who helps the boy return to Konoha with Sasuke. Everyone's been put into intensive care very quickly, as Sasuke is tended to the major wounds inflicted by this new Rasengan variant, while also being watched over by multiple Anbu. While the Sasuke retrieval team has mostly taken the same injuries, they are all treated like in canon and start to pull through over time. As for Naruto, his injury is very different. He still has a lot of the damage that was inflicted by Sasuke throughout the entire fight, but the big change comes from the injury he had sustained from his own attack. It makes Naruto actually almost a top priority, as if it's not treated fast, it might mean he loses his arm, taking up some of the medical ninja's time. But after a quick bit of attention, his arm is fine, and it will just need some rest. Luckily, like previously mentioned, people are able to pull through, after a lot of intensive care and a lot of medical attention. As for Sasuke, the damage dealt from this attack was quite severe, but he heals from his injuries pretty fast, with him then immediately trying to escape the village. However, this time, thanks to being under heavy watch by not only Onbu, but also the copy ninja Kakashi, he's stopped before he even leaves the hospital, as Kakashi tries to talk some sense into his student. However, Sasuke is having none of it, and he's already made up his mind. With him still trying to escape multiple times, it leads to Tsunade having to throw the boy in a jail cell, with a lot more guards watching over it, until she can figure out what to do with him. The moment he's put in a cell though, it leads to both Naruto and Sakura storming Tsunade's office, and asking why she's done this. But the Hokage explains that the two just need to calm down. They need to figure out what they're doing with the boy, who still desperately wants to leave the village and go to Orochimaru. So until further notice, or until Sasuke changes his mind, he won't be allowed out of the jail cell. She does give permission that they can visit very briefly every now and again, but it's not very long visits and it's never together. And the two often take this up, but Sasuke doesn't talk to them, just sits in the cell, planning how he can escape. After a few more escape attempts, the security really starts to increase, but for now, he's really stuck, and this becomes his life for a very short while, at least until the other Sannin arrives back in the village. You see, Jiraiya definitely would have caught wind of everything that had happened, and once arriving back in the village and running into Naruto, who gives a quick briefing of the whole event, not only is he kind of impressed that Naruto managed to sort of make a new Rasengan variant, but is also proud that the kid managed to win. Naruto, after getting a bit of praise, begs Jiraiya to help convince Tsunade to allow Sasuke to go. Jiraiya listens to what the boy is saying before he offers to talk to Tsunade and see what he can do, but he already has a plan to leave the village in a week, so he doesn't have a lot of time. Naruto thanks him before running off to tell Sakura that there might be hope. Jiraiya, at first, heads off towards Tsunade's place, before taking a swift turn and going to speak to Kakashi very briefly, learning a bit more about Sasuke, and just taking in everything the copy ninja has to say. After the quick talk, he thanks him for his time, before Jiraiya now heads off to speak to Tsunade. Upon entering the room, she is expecting to hear a plan from her friend, but what he offers is quite shocking. I want to take both Naruto and Sasuke off on a training trip. Tsunade just looks unconfused as Jiraiya explains his logic. Naruto needs some good training. If people are going to start chasing him, I want him to be ready to defend himself, even though he's a Jinchuriki. Tsunade can understand that and wasn't really going to argue about him taking Naruto. She's not too worried about the kid. He's good and he wasn't really going to put up too much of an issue if he was to leave. It's more Sasuke she needs to know about. As the sage speaks up, I don't want to see what happened to us happen to Naruto. I'm hoping the prospect of training with another Sannin will be enough to pull the kid back into the light, or at least start dragging him. Then I'm going to put all my trust into Naruto to save his friend and push him the rest of the way, bringing him back to us. Tsunade can see Jiraiya reliving the painful days that they lost to Orochimaru, as the woman thinks on everything for a moment, before nodding her head, saying that she trusts not only him, but Naruto's judgment. She tells Jiraiya that if he's going to train Sasuke, there will be some ground rules, as she breaks them all down to Jiraiya, who takes them in and acknowledges them, before being told to go and offer the training to Sasuke. The old Sannin thanks his friend before heading off to speak to the young Uchiha, who, at first, has no interest in hearing what Jiraiya has to say. But once the man starts talking, you know, from what I've heard, from the small conversation I've had with Kakashi, and from Naruto, your goal is to kill someone, right? Well, from what I can guess, you were hoping the training from Orochimaru would give you the power to kill that person. I'm also guessing here. Sasuke stays silent, but Jiraiya knows he pretty much got it on the nose. Look kid, I'm not Orochimaru, but I'm one of the Sannin, so I will offer to train you up and get you strong enough to complete your goal, alongside Naruto. At the start, Sasuke's ears perked up slightly, but hearing the idea of training alongside Naruto bothers him. With the sage being able to see this, Jiraiya explains, you know, you're lucky to have a friend like Naruto. Someone who will go to any lengths to help you, Hell, I'm sure if you asked, he would help you achieve your goal, or at least give you the power you needed. In fact, I think at the moment your goals line up more now than ever. Sasuke doesn't care, but Jiraiya tells the boy that he will give him a while to sit on the idea, but he's only going to hold out for a week, so don't wait too long. As Jiraiya leaves the cell, he heads off to find Naruto and share the idea that they're going off training, but clearly leaves out the information about Sasuke joining them. Naruto, hearing this, starts to pack as he asks Jiraiya what happened with Sasuke. Jiraiya explains how he talked to Tsunade and they're coming up with a plan now. However, they don't know when it will take into effect. They might already have left by the time everything's sorted out. Naruto's bummed to hear, but at least happy Sasuke might be getting out of that jail. He thanks Jiraiya, as the sage says don't worry about it. Now, over with Sasuke, he sits, thinking of what was offered to him. Jiraiya had some good points. He is a Sani, his training would be super beneficial, and he would grow immensely strong from it. But, at the same time, he has no interest in training alongside Naruto. He won't offer anything in advance. He only won that fight through some fluke accident, that's all. And even then, he's not even sure if Naruto understood what he did. Alongside that, he's tried to escape this cell so many times, but has gotten nowhere. He's not even made it close to the village gates. So how will he ever make it to Orochimaru? He sits and thinks about it for a while, and he gets stuck on the idea of Naruto and his goals lining up. He can't figure out what he meant at all. All he can think back to is the day his brother showed up in the village and went after Naruto. He hasn't quite figured everything out yet, but he's definitely starting to piece something together. After sitting on the idea for a few days, Sasuke eventually comes to the conclusion. As the rest of the week passes, finally, Jiraiya and Naruto are getting ready to leave the village. Naruto hasn't heard any news from Jiraiya about Sasuke or Tsunade, but before he can ask many questions, he arrives to the edge of the village, where he sees Jiraiya, Kakashi, a few Onbu, and a handcuffed Uchiha stood round. Naruto is excited as he runs over, asking what's going on, as the sage explains that the kid will be joining them on their training mission. However, they have a lot of rules to follow, which he will have to brief the pair on as they leave the village. Naruto is happy and nods his head, before walking over to his friend and sharing a soft smile, but all he's met with is a cold glare. Naruto isn't shaken though, as he wants to spend more time with Sasuke and figure out what's going on with him. After all, he wants to help his friend. After a moment of Jiraiya and Kakashi speaking, Kakashi walks over to the pair, telling his students that he's very sorry that they couldn't be able to say bye to everyone. However, they had to get Sasuke out of the village quite quietly. That was their main objective, because they didn't want to swarm a crowd round, and they know how the rest of the Konoha 12 get. So that was their main objective. He promises to tell Sakura and everyone else where they're going, and that they'll be back. Naruto thanks his mentor, while Sasuke grows increasingly annoyed, just wanting to leave already. However, after a few more moments of standing around and just getting briefed, they eventually leave. As they make it a few miles out of the village, Jiraiya finally speaks aloud, explaining to both ninjas, mostly Sasuke, the rules that have been set in place for this training to go down. Listen here, you two. I'm only going to explain it once. Now, to get this training to go down, I've had to set a few rules in place. As much as I am not a huge fan of keeping an eye on you a lot, it's what I have to do. Now, the first rule will be no leaving my sight. If I catch you trying to slip away at night or anything, you'll be forced to be tied up and not eat for the entire day. Rule number 2. Any attempts to escape will be punished. You'll be doing research for my book. For me. Rule 3. If we run into any serious threat that we cannot handle, you two are to run and hide, awaiting my further instructions. And Rule 4. Break any of these rules too many times, and you end up back in that cell. As he looks backwards, staring at Sasuke, who for the most part is unfazed, just looking annoyed and still is bound at his hands. Naruto slowly comes to the realization that none of these rules affect him. The only one that he really needs to follow is the third one. But even then, he is annoyed by these rules, but he understands why they're in place, as the group set out to begin their training. A very arduous and a very annoying trip, for the most part. However, this is just a setup so everyone gets an idea of what I will be doing for this What If. I already have a second part written out, but this is just sort of like, testing the waters and see how everyone thinks of it. I do hope people enjoyed this part, and I really enjoyed writing it. I've got plans for the future. I had multiple ways this what if started, essentially how Naruto wins against Sasuke. Some included Naruto getting more chakra from the Nine Tails, which, to be fair, is actually the more likely option. But I thought it would be a bit more fun if we had a timeline where, just through pure dumb luck and a bit of guidance from Kurama, Naruto learnt about nature release a bit early, as it not only adds a bit more of a flair to the whole dynamic, also in canon it does kind of make sense Naruto would win with this pseudo Rasen Shuriken. After all, not going off Pokemon logic here, but air does in fact beat electricity in Naruto, so it was just that little bit of an edge that gave him the win. And it wasn't even a surefire win, it was just, I had lots of ideas of how Naruto won that fight, but I wanted to do the one that I found personally the most fun, which was this one, which gives me a bit more to play with in the future. I do hope people enjoyed this, and I'm hoping this is going to be successful. I have no idea how it will perform. A lot of my new what ifs recently have been doing amazingly, and I know I'm not been finishing many what ifs at the moment. And I don't even know who's listening. I mean, this is only a 60-minute long video. There's probably someone, but I, in the future, plan if a what if isn't doing as great as it could be, I possibly will end it in the Buu arc. This is for most of my Dragon Ball ones. I don't know how this rule will apply to either my Pokemon or Naruto if this does well, but it's just the way that the series has a conclusive ending, but it also doesn't have to go on for too long before it gets too stale. With this all being said though, I do hope everyone enjoyed. Hope you all have a good day, a good night, and hopefully I'll see you next time.